Hi everybody. I usually say welcome to my sewing room, but today we're at my friend Gail's house. You can see behind me that we have our new long arm, and I have been kind of thinking about maybe doing something on the long arm in the near future. But today we're going to continue with our Quilting 101, and we're going to make a log cabin, so don't go away. Okay, so I'm back, and as I said just a minute ago, we are at my friend Gail's house. Here's my friend Gail. She's sitting right here, and she's going to help me a little bit with getting some of the sewing done so we can put this log cabin together. I do want to tell you that I've been working through this book. It's called Quilt Block Genius, and I'm going to continue to work on it quite a bit through this class because it is just chock full of quilt blocks, which makes it really fun to try and think of things that might get a little bit more complicated so that we can do some flying geese and some half square triangles. But today we're going to do the log cabin, and this has a very nice picture of one. And the one that they have on here, one of the things I like about this book is that they have 8-inch, 12-inch, and 16-inch. I'm going with the measurements in the 8-inch, and then I'm adding another row to make it a 10.5-inch block so that it will go with some of the other blocks that we are making. But one of the things about the log cabin is, one, I think you should get a book, even if it's not this book, any book, so you can help yourself so you don't have to do the math. But it's done in strips that go around in a circle. Sometimes people will call it courthouse steps because courthouse steps basically does the same thing. I want to put a couple of pictures up in the corner of the screen so you can see some different variations of the log cabin or courthouse steps. So you can get a completely different look with either using dark colors on one side and light colors on the other, or changing the colors to start from dark and get light. There's a whole lot of different things you can do with this pattern. That's a lot of fun. And I have to confess, my first quilt, and real quilt that I ever made, was a log cabin quilt through Eleanor Burns's book. That was called 25 Years and Still Stripping. That was actually the name of the book, and it had a log cabin in it, and I didn't put any embroidery in it. I just did the quilting, and so that's why I consider it my first real quilt that I'd ever made. And they're very, very simple, and there's not a lot of corners that have to come together, so you don't worry about matching corners. And as I said before, they're really fun to do. So today we're going to start with the measurements that are on here, and I'll put it down in the description, but basically what it tells you to do is do 1.5-inch strips and 2.5-inch by 2.5-inch square in the center. As far as the log cabin goes, I did a little research on it, and a lot of people believe the pattern goes back to around 1863 during the Civil War, where ladies were making the log cabin quilt to earn money for the Union Army. And it was almost like a tribute to Abraham Lincoln because he grew up in a log cabin. The center square that is in the middle of the log cabin is sometimes done in red and represents the hearth of the home. It's sometimes done in yellow, which represents the sunshine coming through the window inside the home. And I have gone to quilt classes where the teacher absolutely insisted that you had to put red in the center because then it was an authentic log cabin quilt. But we're not going to do that today because we want to make a Christmas quilt. And so we're going to start with the center square in a light color, and we're going to work out dark and light on one side. So I'm going to move the camera so that you can see what I'm doing, and I'm going to show you how to cut out the squares to get started on this. So hopefully that'll give you a nice view of what we're doing. And I cut the center square at 2.5 by 2.5, and it's gold. And Gail just pointed out to me that it's a nice one for Christmas because it's got Christmas stars or snowflakes in the center. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put them like this, one on each side. And then we're going to put the gold here. And we're going to work our way out, which I'm confused for a second here, so don't judge me. But eventually it's going to work itself out, and we're going to create a log cabin with it. But we need to cut the strips ahead of time, and I'll tell you why. Because when you start to sew these together, if you don't have this measuring exactly right, as you start to have several strips like this laying on top of each other, and you lay a strip this way, you will pull these apart, and then your square will start to get wonky. So follow the directions of your pattern. Make sure that you cut each one exactly the right size and fit them in there so they do exactly what you want them to do. And each one of these have been cut to 1.5 by 2.5, 4.5, 6.5, and 8.5. So they're all the right size strips. And I have a confession to make. I watched my last video and I realized that I made some rules and then I broke them. And one of the rule is that you always close this. Don't ever open it and set it down here and cut yourself. And then I watched my video and I realized I did exactly what I said not to. So make sure that you close it just for safety's sake. And then what we're going to do is we're going to lay this down and measure 1.5 inches. And I've said this before, I'm a lefty, so sometimes I measure from the opposite direction. This is a 3-inch ruler, so 1.5 inches is right here. We're going to make sure it's 1.5 inches all the way down. Open it up. I'm going to actually take a second and stand up so I can do even pressure all the way down and cut away from me. Don't cut toward me. And then that's going to get me my 1.5 inch strip. And then for this very last one that I have to do, because I've cut all the other ones in advance, I need one that's 10.5. So I'm going to cut the selvage off and then turn my ruler till it says 10.5. So there's my 10.5 one, and I also need an 8.5 one. So here's 8.5. And so get all those ready ahead of time so when we get ready to start sewing them, you won't have to stop and cut them and lose your rhythm. So let's go ahead and let's start putting this together. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start at the center square. And if you look down here, I've got this kind of all set up. So here's our 2.5 by 2.5 square. And then here's the 2 end pieces that are going to start, one on each end, just like that. And I'm going to have Gail go ahead and sew those. Okay. And the reason why I have it all laid out like this is because even I get confused sometimes. After I started putting it out here to show you, I got really twisted around. It took me a couple of minutes to get it back the way we wanted. So we're going to leave it like this. And if you have a flannel board in your sewing room where you can lay out your quilt squares, it's very, very helpful. And remember to do that 1/4 inch that we did last time. While we're talking about that, I have to confess to you, and I put it in some of the notes, that sometimes when I'm filming with my camera, it flips everything. So it's like a negative image. And so it looks like I put the fabric on the wrong side of the foot as I was sewing. So I'm just telling you that's a backwards image. I will try very hard not to do that again. I'll always make sure I flip it around right so I don't confuse you about what side of the foot you should be measuring your 1/4 inch at. And we have an ironing board here. I'm going to switch this foot. I've got it set wrong. Oh, okay. One of the nice things, Gail is using the NS40, which is a brother sewing machine. I really like it. We sold it for years. Now they have an NS80, and they do have a P stitch on that machine that is supposed to be your piecing stitch. A lot of people don't even know that's what it's in there for, so that they can get a 1/4 inch and use your regular J foot instead of putting a 1/4 inch foot on there. So you'll notice that I ironed this so that I got the 1/4 inch seam allowance going out, and then as we work, we're going to continue to iron them out so that they're nice and flat. So now that we have this piece completely done, we're going to take the next 2 pieces, which we want to keep dark and light. So we're going to put a dark one here, and then we're going to put a light one here. So I'm gonna go ahead and have Gail sew that for you. Okay, so she just sewed those 2 pieces for me, and I'm putting it down here on the ironing board. I moved the camera a little bit, so hopefully you can see more what I'm doing a little bit better. Again, I pushed them out. So that's what we've got so far. And now we're going to do the next light color. So we're going to put one here, and then the dark color is going to be red, and we're going to put one here, and we'll continue to work our way out. There you go. Hopefully we get that right. You may not be doing your quilt as a Christmas quilt the way I'm doing this one. You can do it with scrap fabric. You can do it with batiks. You can make a log cabin in just about anything that you want to make it into. But I've been thinking a lot about what I'm going to do with this, and I think I want to do a quilt square and then a solid black with a Bible verse, like for instance, for unto us a son is given, for unto us a child is born, for unto us a son is given, and then do a quilt block. And then when we finish it up, it'll make a real pretty Christmas quilt. Okay, so let's go ahead and press this out. I'm going to push it like this and push the seams out. Okay, so we have the lights going this way and the darks going this way. So the next light is going to go here, and the next dark is going to go here. And you'll notice that this dark is the same colors, and these 2 lights are the same colors. That's going to create the look of the log cabin. But you could do them in different colors if you wanted to and get a completely different look. So let's go ahead and do that. So I think you guys are getting the idea of exactly the way this is going to come out. So we're going to go ahead and finish out the square, and I'll show you what it looks like when we're done. We're back now, and we've got one more seam to press to finish up this block, and that's what I'm going to be doing right now. And I will show this to you. This is what it looks like. Isn't it pretty? And see the way all the lights are on one side and the darks are on the other part? I'm going to take this ironing mat away. And so this is a really cool ruler because it literally spins like this. I showed you a smaller one that I have at home, and it basically does the same thing. It makes it really easy for you to cut around the sides. So this is a 12.5-inch ruler, and it's got 1/2 inches going on either side. And that's one of the things I like, especially as a left-handed person, because I get really turned around sometimes. You get the 1/2 inch, so I can go to exactly 10 inches here, and I can trim it. So I'm going to stand up to make sure that I get this at exactly, and I think between Gail and I, we've done this pretty good this time. We don't have it, it's almost exactly the right size. So I probably don't even need to trim it.
And you used your mat.
And I used my mat and I forgot to flip it around. Oh dear. Okay, let's lay this one here at exactly 10.5. 10.5. Now let me show you how to do it like this without moving it. You just take it and you just, it's not
spinning.
moving. Okay, that's all right. Okay, so here's our finished square. Isn't it beautiful? It came out really, really nice. I wanted to say just a little bit about, again, I showed you a couple of pictures, but here's some real log cabin squares that Gail is working on. She's working on this quilt right here. It's called Boho Heart, and it is just a really crazy quilt that has a whole lot of stuff in it, and she's been really busy making a lot of the squares. But these are the log cabins that you've made, right? And you're just using it from scraps?
Just from scratch.
Just from scratch. So look how pretty this one is. It's just gold in the center, and it's got all different colors going through the outside. And then this one here, I told her it looks like an eyeball, but look how
flower.
It's a flower in the center, but it's got batiks in it. So isn't that one pretty? And then she did this one here with purple and then blue going around the outside. So it's a really good sample of how different your quilts can look if you're doing a log cabin or courthouse steps. This one here is very much like the one we just made with lights on one side and darks on the other. So I thought that would be really something fun for you to see and know that a log cabin is a really easy way for you to get started, whether you're using fat strips or thin strips, looking for it in a book or kind of making it up as you go along. So I wanted to touch just a little bit on what we're going to do next. And I would like to introduce a half square triangle. That's a little bit scary to get started with, but they're really, really easy to do. So again, going in this book here that's called Quilt Block Genius, we're talking about either doing the Old Crow, which has a whole lot of half square triangles and they're little squares, or doing the Prairie Queen, which has bigger ones and it has some what we call a 4-patch in it. So that would be a little bit easier for the beginner.
This one's kind of interesting too.
Oh.
Oh, no, never mind. That's not a half square triangle.
That's not
a rectangle.
That's called pudding pie. And that is interesting. That might be a good one for us to try as well. So make some comments on the video and let us know what you might like to see us do next in the quilting class. And we're going to keep this up and probably try and get one up at least once a week for you. I hope you had a good time and you learned something. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.